Hello, and welcome. Wherever you are tonight, let your breathing slow down, one gentle breath at a time. The day is finished now. You do not need to solve anything else. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your thoughts become lighter. Tonight we travel into a medieval city in the years of the Black Death. You will walk quiet streets by lantern light. You will hear doors close, carts roll over old stone, and the soft rustle of waxed cloth. And through it all, you will follow one life, a plague doctor asked to move between fear and duty, between rumor and care. This is not a story of shock. It is a slow story, a human story. If sleep arrives before the end, let it arrive naturally. You are safe here. You only need to listen. So close your eyes, settle into the dark, and when you are ready, we begin. You wake before sunrise to a bell that is not the church bell. It is the municipal bell, struck in a short repeating pattern that means summons, not prayer. The room is still dark. A blue line of morning rests on the edge of the window, and the ash in the hearth has gone gray. For a few breaths you lie still, listening. Cartwheels in the lane, a distant cough, a dog barking once and then no more. On the table beside your bed there is a folded letter sealed with red wax. It arrived after midnight, carried by a city runner who would not step across your threshold. The wax has the mark of the health magistracy. A small tower, a branch, and a cross. You sit up, break the seal, and read by candlelight. Dr. Matteo Vieri, by order of the Magistrates of Public Health, you are assigned to District 5 effective immediately. You will inspect households under suspicion, certify deaths where required, and submit daily ledgers before sunset. The words are formal and almost gentle, but the message is simple. The sickness has entered your quarter, and the city has run out of time. You had studied medicine in Bologna when the world still felt orderly. You learned Galen and Avicenna, humors and balances, pulse and urine, air and temperament. You copied diagrams in neat dark ink and listened to masters who spoke as if all illness could be placed into categories with enough patience. That learning gave you language, but it did not prepare you for this dawn. From your doorway you see shutters closed on homes that once opened early for bread and fish. The fountain at the corner still runs, but no children gather there. A woman crosses the lane with a scarf over her mouth and a sprig of rosemary in her hand, as if scent alone could make the air safe. At the magistrate's hall, clerks are already at work. Sand is spread over wet ink. Wax pools in brass bowls. Men who once argued over taxes now whisper over maps. A captain of guards points to your district with a blunt finger. You are not here to cure, he says. You are here to observe, to separate, to report. A clerk gives you a leather satchel with folded notices, thread, charcoal, and a ledger bound in rough hide. On the first page, someone has written columns in advance: name, street, signs, household count, outcome. Outcome. You move through the morning with a strange calm that feels borrowed. A barber surgeon named Piero joins you, carrying knives and forceps wrapped in linen. Two porters pull a narrow cart for bedding, vinegar jars, and a bucket of lime. No one speaks much. Speech costs energy, and everyone is saving energy now. Your first call is a baker's house, by the old wall. The door opens only to the width of a hand. A woman's face appears in the gap. Her eyes are bright from sleeplessness. He has fever, she whispers. Under the arm a swelling. He cannot stand. Inside, the air is thick with sour cloth and spent firewood. The baker lies on a pallet, skin damp, lips cracked. He tries to sit when he sees your robe and fails. You count breaths. You note the swelling near the armpit. You ask how many in the household have cough or pain. You avoid promises. In your ledger, you write what you can bear to write. The second house is smaller. 2 sisters live with their father. The father is dead before noon, and one sister is shaking from fever by the time you seal the door notice. The surviving sister asks how long the order lasts. 40 days, you tell her. Food will be left outside. 40 days sounds like a sentence from scripture, too exact and too large. By midday, church bells ring for ordinary prayer, but the sound is thin in the streets. Shops remain shut. Tailors do not sing at their workbenches. Even the pigeons seem to move quietly, stepping in circles near grain that no one has swept. At the edge of District 5, you pause beside a stone well. You wash your hands in water gone cold and pour vinegar over your cuffs. Piero stands beside you, staring at his own fingers as if they belong to someone else. Do you think it can be stopped? He asks. You answer honestly in the only way that still feels useful. I think we can slow suffering. I think we can keep records. I think we can keep people from dying alone. It is not a victory speech, it is a work plan. When sunset comes, you return to the hall with pages filled in a careful hand. The clerk takes your ledger and weighs it in his palm as if weight might predict tomorrow. Behind him, shelves are stacked with ledgers from other districts, all labeled by week, all tied with cord. The city is becoming paper as much as stone. At home, you remove your robe and hang it near the door. You wash with soap and vinegar until your skin stings. You eat bread hard as wood and a little onion. You sit by the window and watch darkness settle over tiled roofs. A lantern moves in the lane below. Then another, then another. Night in the city used to mean music from courtyards, arguments over dice, and laughter from taverns. Now it means footsteps counted one by one. Before sleep, you open the letter again, though you know every line. Assigned to District 5, effective immediately. You close your eyes and listen to the quiet house. Tomorrow will bring more doors, more names, more outcomes. You do not yet know how long this work will last or what it will make of you. But dawn will come, and when the bell sounds again, you will rise. On your second morning, the quartermaster measures you for the long outer coat. It is heavy canvas brushed with wax and oil, stiff at the seams, built less for comfort than for distance. The city calls it protection. You call it a reminder, cloth between skin and fear. The famous beaked mask that later generations imagine is not yet universal in every city, but face coverings exist in simpler forms. You are given a hooded cowl, glass eye pieces set in a leather frame, and a pouch for herbs to place near the nose. Juniper, mint, rosemary, camphor, fragrance against dread. People believe bad air carries sickness, corrupt vapors, poisoned mists, invisible rot from marsh and alley. You were trained to read disease through humors, seasons, diet, and imbalance. You do not know what truly moves from one body to another, but you know this: close contact in crowded rooms often precedes new cases. So you build routines from uncertainty. You approach doors from the side, not directly in front. You ask for windows opened when weather allows. You keep distance during questioning. You touch as little as possible. You burn soiled straw. You mark dates. You insist that bedding stay with the household under seal. At the magistrate's hall, instructions change daily. A clerk reads aloud from a fresh ordinance. No public gatherings after evening prayer. No market stalls in the central square except grain and salt. No wake vigils inside private homes. bodies to be moved before dawn. The wording is strict and clean, as if clean wording could clean reality. Some citizens obey with exhausted discipline. Others resist with anger sharpened by hunger. A cooper refuses to close his workshop and shouts that magistrates fear shadows. A widow begs for one final meal with her quarantined daughter. A priest asks if sacraments can be delivered through a doorway and whether grace travels across wood. You answer questions that medicine school never included. How long until fever breaks? Can a cat carry death? Is wine safer than water? Will the virgin spare children? Can smoke cleanse a house? Your best answer is often the same gentle sentence. We do not know enough, but we can still reduce risk. By afternoon, your satchel smells of vinegar and wax. The ledger pages are rough under your glove. In one lane, you find a family airing blankets from an upper window, beating cloth with sticks while neighbors watch in silence. In another, a tavern keeper has nailed boards over his own door and painted a crude cross to warn strangers away. At a narrow courtyard near the dyer's quarter, you meet an elderly physician named Alessandra, one of the few women permitted to practice openly because her late husband held a city contract. Her hands are steady, her gaze is direct. You spend too long with the dead, she says quietly. Count the living first. It sounds simple, but it alters your rhythm. In each house after that, before recording death, you record who still breathes, who can fetch water, who can keep a fire lit. Survival becomes a column, not an afterthought. Toward evening, you visit the temporary infirmary in a converted guild hall. Cots line the floor between carved pillars. Linen hangs as makeshift partitions. A boy no older than 12 carries broth from bed to bed, his sleeves rolled to the elbow, his expression older than his face. A nun at the far wall asks for a list of households with no healthy adult. She has arranged rotating care teams from 3 convents. They will leave bread, onions, and broth at marked doors. You hand her names. She does not flinch. Outside, the city smells of smoke from small cleansing fires. People burn rosemary, pine, and old furniture when wood runs short. The sky turns copper at sunset. From somewhere beyond the wall, geese call in the marsh. When you return home, removing the waxed coat takes effort. The seams have stiffened in the cold. You hang it beside yesterday's robe and scrub your hands until the skin on your knuckles cracks. On your table lies a thin booklet copied by a student years ago. A compendium of remedies, rose syrup for heat, Viriac for poison, bloodletting by moon phase, cooling compresses for inflamed swellings. You turn the pages and feel both gratitude and grief. So much study, so little certainty. Before bed, you write private notes separate from the official ledger. Today the cooper shouted, but later closed his shop. Today a widow sang to her daughter through a door for an hour. Today Sister Marta asked for 20 loaves and got 12. Today 3 men recovered enough strength to stand. These notes are not required by magistrates. They are required by memory. In the lane below, a watchman calls the hour. The city answers with silence and an occasional cough behind shutters. You lie down and let the silence settle. Leather, wax, glass, herbs, rules, columns, signatures. None of it can erase fear, but each small practice draws a thin line between chaos and care. At dawn, you will step back across that line and begin again. By the 3rd week, one street in District 5 is fully sealed. 2 guards stand at each entrance with pikes grounded on stone. A rope barrier crosses the lane. Notices are pasted on doors with wax that is melted and hardened in uneven tiers. Households inside may not leave. Food is delivered at the corners and carried inward by assigned residents. You walk in at first light with Piero and a young clerk named Tommaso, who carries extra ink and tries not to look afraid. The street is narrower than you remember, as if fear has bent the walls inward. Laundry lines hang empty above you. A wooden toy horse lies near a drain where rainwater gathers, one wheel broken. From a second-floor window, an old man calls your name before you reach his door. He has tied a white cloth to the sill to signal need. Inside, his daughter has fever and severe thirst. You check pulse and breathing. You cool her forehead with cloth dipped in vinegar water, then tell the family how to rotate care so one person can sleep. They ask for certainty. You give structure instead. Keep water warm near the bed. Open the shutter at midday for air. Do not all crowd the room. Mark each fever rise by hour. Call if breathing worsens. In the next house, a mason lies silent while his wife sits beside him holding prayer beads worn smooth. She does not cry when you confirm death. She nods once as if you have delivered a delayed message she expected yesterday. Tommaso writes while you speak. Name, age approximate, trade, date, household contacts. Outside, a child asks through a closed door if he can feed the pigeons in the square when quarantine ends. Piero kneels so his voice reaches the lower crack in the wood. When the guards lift the rope, you can feed all of them, he says. The child is quiet for a moment, then asks if pigeons remember faces. Piero smiles despite himself. Perhaps better than magistrates do. Mid-morning brings wind from the river, carrying damp cold and the smell of reeds. You stop at a courtyard where 4 families share one pump. The handle is wrapped in cloth soaked with vinegar, replaced twice a day by agreement. In crisis, ordinary people invent public health without naming it. A woman named Alina shows you a schedule scratched into plaster, water hours by household, wash basin rotation, firewood watch, broth deliveries. Beside each line are small charcoal marks for completion. Who made this, you ask? All of us, she says. We were tired of shouting. You copy the structure into your notebook and later recommend it to other quarantine blocks. Not every idea descends from magistrates. Many rise from kitchens and courtyards. At noon, bells ring for prayer. No one goes out. The sound drips over closed doors and tied cloth signals. You eat bread standing in a doorway while Tommaso warms his hands around a clay cup of thin wine. Do you ever get used to this? He asks. You think before answering. You get used to showing up, you say, not to the loss. In late afternoon, you reach the house at the far end where a carpenter and his apprentice were reported ill. The apprentice opens the door wearing gloves made from old saddle leather. He keeps his distance and speaks clearly. Master is weak but breathing. I moved him near the window. I burned the bedding from yesterday. You nod, impressed by the precision. Who taught you? No one, he says. I watched. Observation becomes instruction. Instruction becomes habit. Habit becomes survival. Before leaving the sealed street, you stop at a chapel niche carved into the wall near the south gate. A small candle burns there, protected by a cracked glass shade. Someone has placed a loaf the size of a fist beneath the icon, a gift for anyone passing hungry. You do not know who left it. You only know it is gone by the next morning and replaced again by evening. When you finally step beyond the rope barrier at dusk, the city outside feels both familiar and strange, louder and somehow emptier. A fish seller calls half-heartedly from a distant lane. A mule brays. Two boys run past with sacks of lentils, laughing as if laughter itself were contraband. At the hall, you submit reports from 21 households. The clerk stamps each page with ink so dark it shines blue in the lamplight. Case is rising in Sealed Street, he mutters. May God keep District 5. Back in your room, you remove gloves and hold your hands over a basin of warm water until sensation returns to your fingers. You close your eyes and picture the chalk schedule in Alina's courtyard, the apprentice moving a bed to the window, the child asking about pigeons. Plague narrows streets, it narrows lives. But inside that narrowing, people still arrange water rotations, share firewood, and ask future tense questions. When sleep comes, it comes on that small, stubborn word. When? By month 2, your boots know the route to the records hall better than your thoughts do. Each evening you arrive with pages smudged by rain, wax, and hurried hands. Each evening clerks sort your notes into stacks by district, then into shelves by week, then into bundles tied with twine. Above the shelves hangs a painted sentence in Latin, "Order preserves the city." At first the sentence felt ceremonial, now it feels practical. In plague time, records are not paperwork, they are navigation. Which street needs grain delivery? Which households lack any healthy adult? Which Paris cemeteries are near capacity? Which quarantine orders have expired? Which survivors can return to work? The magistrates ask you to add one more column to every report, probable chain of contact. Not because anyone can prove contagion precisely, but because patterns matter. Sister ill after nursing brother, apprentice ill after carrying bedding, 3 neighbors ill after shared vigil. You resist writing blame, you aim for sequence. One afternoon you were called to testify in a council chamber that smells of damp wool and lamp oil. 3 officials sit behind a long table. A notary waits with sharpened quill. Dr. Vieri asks the senior magistrate, does closure of the West Market reduce incidents in adjacent lanes? You answer with what the ledger shows. Crowding has dropped, reports from nearby streets have slowed, but hunger complaints have doubled. The magistrate rubs his brow. Then we need mobile grain points, he says. Else we trade one crisis for another. This is how policy moves now, not from certainty, but from imperfect numbers carried by tired people. Outside formal chambers, your ledger work takes different forms. You map doors marked with black crosses. You record which households can receive apprentices after quarantine. You track recovered laborers for the Tanners Guild, whose vats stand idle without skilled hands. A city does not survive on prayers alone. It survives on bread, hauling, stitching, hammering, and lists. Tommaso grows better at writing quickly while walking. He has started adding tiny symbols in the margin, a circle for children present, a triangle for no fuel, a square for disability. At first you scold him for unofficial notation, then you realize his marks reveal who will need help first when supplies thin. Keep doing that, you tell him, but teach the others. At the infirmary, Alessandra has organized cots by symptom pattern rather than arrival order. Fever with swelling near the neck to one side, severe cough to another. Those with appetite returning near the windows where sunlight reaches longest. How did you decide this, you ask? She shrugs. By seeing what happened when we did not. Observation again, trial again, learning without triumph. Midweek, rain begins and does not stop for 2 days. Streets run slick with mud and horse waste. Notices peel from doors, lime pits for refuse fill faster than expected. The city sends laborers to reinforce drainage channels near District 5. You add their names to exposure watch lists. No one is outside risk, some are just outside recognition. On the third wet evening, a candle merchant named Davide arrives at the hall carrying a wrapped bundle. Inside are 20 short tallow candles. For the record clerks, he says, they cannot copy ledgers in the dark. The clerk on duty nearly weeps from fatigue and gratitude. You note this in your private notebook. Civic function depends on tiny gifts. As deaths rise, ritual adjusts. Priests shorten burial prayers at crowded grounds. Families stand farther apart. Grave diggers rotate shifts to avoid collapse. The bell tolls less often now, not because fewer people die, but because ringing for every death would never stop. Silence becomes administrative mercy. One night you review a week's pages by lantern and notice a pattern. Households with designated caregivers and written routines show better survival. It is not perfect, but it is measurable. You draft a 1-page guidance sheet for district captains. Choose 1 caregiver per patient if possible. Ventilate room at fixed hours. Separate water basins. Burn or isolate heavily soiled cloth. Log fever by time. Request relief before exhaustion. The captain reads it, grunts, and says, "We can post this by dawn." You sleep only 3 hours that night, but the next day you see the sheet copied in charcoal on a courtyard wall. At dusk, walking home, you pass a mason rebuilding a collapsed doorway while his daughter holds a lantern. Stone by stone, hinge by hinge, ordinary repair continues under extraordinary strain. In your room, you unwrap your own small candle and place it by the ledger. You think of Davide, of Tommaso's symbols, of Alessandra's cot arrangement, of the magistrate asking for grain points instead of speeches. The work is not glorious. It is repetitive, imperfect, and often heartbreaking. Yet each accurate line, each copied notice, each measured adjustment keeps some part of the city from drifting into panic. Before sleep, you write 1 sentence at the bottom of today's page. If we cannot control the plague, we can still control how carefully we see each other. When the central market closes, you feel the change before you see it. The morning air is missing familiar sounds, fishmongers calling prices, women debating flour quality, mule drivers cursing at blocked carts. In their place comes a broad, unsettled, quiet broken by single noises that travel too far. A dropped bucket, a shutter hinge, a distant argument over ration tokens. You are assigned to assist the grain office for 2 days each week. Plague doctor by training, logistics clerk by necessity. The city has divided itself into supply circles, each circle tied to a church courtyard where bread and legumes are distributed at staggered hours. If everyone arrives at once, crowding rises. If deliveries are late, anger rises. Either way, sickness follows disorder. At the first distribution point, a line forms before sunrise despite posted times. A guard tries to separate households by district marks painted on their sleeves. An old soldier at the front refuses to move, insisting his wife cannot wait in rain. Behind him, a seamstress coughs into cloth and sways from fatigue. You step between them and lower your voice. We will serve this line in place. No pushing, no shouting. Everyone is seen. The promise is risky, but the tone works. Bodies settle, shoulders drop. A volunteer begins reading names from your list. Food systems reveal social truth quickly. Wealthier families still have hidden reserves, salted meat, old wheat, wine casks, and cool cellars. Poorer households count onions one by one. Apprentices share crusts. Widows trade candles for beans. Children learn to wait while adults negotiate hunger with dignity. In your rounds, medical questions now arrive wrapped in market language. Can fever broth be made without chicken? Is mold on bread always dangerous? Can we boil old lentils twice? Should quarantined homes get extra salt? You answer as best you can and add supply notes to the health ledger. Nutrition, you realize, is now part of treatment. At the tanner's lane, you inspect 3 workers too weak to return to vats. Their foreman begs for clearance anyway. If work stops another week, he says, half the district loses wages. You mark 2 as not fit for labor and 1 as limited duty. No heavy lifting, outdoor tasks only. The foreman curses under his breath but accepts the paper. In plague time, medical certification becomes a gate to bread. The bakery guild petitions. Magistrates for wood priority, arguing that flour without fuel is wasted grain. Carters petition for axle grease. Millers petition for guard escorts beyond the walls after rumors of theft. Each request is reasonable. Resources are not. At night council, officials spread maps and calculate how to reroute carts around quarantine zones. Tommaso places pebbles on roads to model traffic flow. Remove 1 pebble in 2 districts, lose supply by noon. Add 1 guard post and delivery speed drops 15%. No equation is clean. Every fix creates a new edge case. One evening, you accompany Sister Marta to a lane where 5 households share 1 oven. The brick dome still holds heat from morning baking. She has organized a rotation board. Each family gets 1 hour, fuel pooled, ash saved for soap making. Who wrote this, you ask? A girl of 14, she says. Better than all of us. The girl appears from the doorway, flour on her hands, and shrugs when praised. If we argue, bread burns, she says. Practical wisdom, plain and perfect. Meanwhile, rumor does what rumor always does in thin times. Some whisper the grain is poisoned by foreigners. Others say magistrates hoard food for nobles. You investigate 2 accusations and find ordinary miscounting, plus 1 dishonest warehouse keeper skimming sacks for private sale. The keeper is arrested at dawn, public notice posted by noon. Trust once cracked takes longer to repair than stone. As autumn approaches, carts arrive with smaller loads. Harvests from nearby villages are reduced by labor shortages. Fields were left uncut where whole households fell ill. You add another column to district reports. Households with seed shortage for next season. The magistrate reading your page looks up, suddenly very tired. So this winter is not the end, he says. It is just the bridge. Yes, you answer. We are building that bridge while crossing it. On your walk home, you pass the empty market square. Rain gathers in cart ruts. Pigeons peck at abandoned cabbage leaves. A faded festival banner still hangs from a balcony, its bright paint dulled by weather. You stand there for a moment and imagine the square months from now, full again with voices, bargaining, and spilled grain underfoot. Not a fantasy, a forecast. In your room you write private notes by candlelight. Today no one fought at ration line 3. Today the 14-year-old baker prevented a shortage. Today we found theft and named it. Today 3 recovered laborers return to work. Markets may fall silent, but systems can still speak through lists, schedules, and shared discipline. When you sleep, you dream of the square in sunlight, noisy and ordinary, and you wake believing ordinary is worth every careful hour. In weeks of rising loss, faith becomes both shelter and argument. At dawn you hear whispered rosaries behind shutters. At noon you see small icons hung above doors beside quarantine notices. At dusk candles flicker in windows facing the cathedral, tiny signals that someone inside still hopes to be seen by heaven. But faith does not arrive in one form. Some people seek quiet prayer at home, careful and steady. Others demand public processions, convinced that collective penance will lift the sickness. Magistrates fear crowded gatherings. Priests fear spiritual abandonment. You stand between these fears, holding a ledger and trying to keep language gentle. A parish priest named Father Johnny asks you to attend a meeting in the cloister garden. Rain taps on stone. The herb beds have gone wild. 3 widows, 2 guild elders, and 1 angry spice merchant wait beneath the arcade. The merchant speaks first. If we cannot process with relics, we are abandoned. 1 widow answers before you can. If we process, my sons may die. The argument rises, then stalls in exhausted silence. You propose a compromise already tested in District 2, rotating household prayer hours, bells at fixed intervals, priests offering blessings from street corners without crowd formation, and written litanies posted at wells so people can pray in place. It is not as dramatic as a procession. It is safer. By evening, Father Johnny approves. The merchant mutters but signs. The first night of this new pattern, the city sounds different. Instead of one large crowd singing, voices emerge from many homes at once, soft and staggered. A psalm here, a whispered creed there, a mother humming with a child half asleep. Distributed devotion, no single epicenter. You record an unexpected effect, less panic at sundown, fewer confrontations with guards, and improved compliance with quarantine boundaries. Ritual, when adapted, can stabilize behavior. Not all religious responses remain gentle. On the east edge of the city, a group of penitents arrives from outside walls, backs marked by self-whipping, chanting that punishment must be visible to be accepted by God. Crowds gather to watch. Magistrates send guards to disperse them before dusk. You are asked to examine 2 men injured in the confusion. One has fever and deep cuts. The other has only cuts and profound terror. You treat both and note how quickly spectacle can turn into transmission. At the infirmary chapel, Sister Marta has arranged candles in 3 rows, for the sick, for the dead, for caregivers. Every night, 1 candle from each row is carried to a window and placed where passers-by can see it. Why 3 rows, you ask? Because grief alone can drown people, she says. We must also remember duty and survival. Her system spreads. Within days, windows across District 5 display 3 lights at night. The city becomes a map of tiny constellations. In private homes, moral questions arrive with trembling hands. A son asks if avoiding his infected father is a sin. A mother asks whether sealing her own door against neighbors in need is cruelty. A nurse asks if exhaustion makes her faith weak. You answer carefully, aware that medicine has no final authority here. Care can include distance, you say. Prudence is not betrayal. Rest is not abandonment. Sometimes your words help, sometimes they only soften the edge of guilt. One afternoon, you accompany Father Johnny to a quarantined house where an elderly woman requests confession through the door. The priest sits on a stool in the lane, hat in his lap, while she speaks from behind wood darkened by rain. You stand nearby, watching the street remain quiet, watching two neighbors place bread on each other's thresholds without contact. Grace, you think, can travel through barriers. As nights lengthen, fear shifts shape. It is less explosive, more chronic. People no longer gasp at each new notice. They carry dread like extra clothing, always worn, rarely mentioned. Your own body keeps score. Shoulders tight, sleep shallow, appetite uncertain. To keep yourself steady, you adopt a routine before bed. Wash hands in warm water. Write 3 factual notes from the day. Write 1 act of kindness witnessed. Sit in silence for 10 breaths. Tonight your kindness note reads, Baker left 2 rolls at unknown door. It is enough. When you close your notebook, bells ring the final hour from the cathedral tower, slow and low. No crowd answers, yet from many windows the 3-candle pattern glows against the dark. You lie down and listen to the city pray in fragments, each home a small chapel, each voice imperfect and sincere. Faith has not cured the plague, but faith, adapted with care, has helped people endure another day without surrendering to chaos. The hardest calls come after midnight. By day, administration gives you structure, ledgers, routes, signatures. At night, structure thins, lamps burn low, streets empty. The city sounds like cloth moving in another room. A watchman taps your shutter with the butt of his staff at the 2nd hour. Urgent call, South Lane, widow and child. You dress in practiced darkness, pull on gloves still damp from washing, and follow him through alleys lit by moon and oil flame. Your breath clouds in the cold. At the house, the widow kneels by a pallet where her son lies fevered, cheeks flushed, breathing fast and shallow. She has no relatives left nearby. Neighbors are quarantined. She has not slept in 2 nights. You check pulse, cool the boy's neck, and show her how to count breaths with a bead string so panic does not erase numbers. Piero arrives with broth and a warmed stone wrapped in cloth for the child's feet. Will he live, she asks. You answer the only honest way. I do not know, but he is not alone. Sometimes medicine in plague time is no more than presence, pacing, hydration, and steady voice. Small interventions repeated with patience. At the next call, an old man is dying in a workshop behind his own bakery oven. He insists on hearing the market bells one more time, forgetting there are no market bells now. You sit beside him while his granddaughter recites the names of streets where he once delivered loaves at dawn. By the end of the list, his breathing slows and then stops. You certify death with numb fingers and help the granddaughter fold his hands. On another night, you visit 2 brothers sharing one room, both ill, both stubborn. They refuse to rotate rest because each fears sleeping through the other's decline. You settle them with an hourglass and a rule. One rests while one watches, then switch at each turn of sand. The next evening they report slightly improved fever and 6 hours of total sleep between them. Tiny systems again. A city survives on tiny systems. Near the river gate, Sister Marta has organized a night circuit for volunteers who deliver water and lamp oil to households flagged as high risk. She asks you to mark priorities in advance so supplies go first to patients with severe dehydration and to homes with infants. You draw circles on a district map by candlelight, red for immediate, gray for monitor, blue for stable. Tommaso now accompanies you on several night rounds. He no longer trembles when doors open. He carries a small pouch of dried lemon peel under his mask because, he says, it reminds him summer will return. At a crossing near the smithy, he asks quietly, "Do you ever feel guilty sleeping?" "Yes," you say, "and sleep anyway. Because if we collapse, the map collapses." He nods and writes that sentence in his own notebook. Not every night ends in grief. One dawn, after 6 straight calls, you step into a courtyard where a woman in recovery sits wrapped in blankets, sipping broth with both hands. She raises the cup toward you in thanks, but is too weak to speak. Her daughter, maybe 9 years old, whispers, "We kept the schedule you wrote." You smile behind the mask where no one can see it. Another night, you deliver notice releasing a household from quarantine after 40 days with no new fever. The father opens the door, sees the stamped paper, and weeps without sound. His neighbors, still inside their own homes, tap walls and shutters in quiet celebration. Even muted joy carries through stone. Yet the cost accumulates. You begin forgetting ordinary words for simple tools. You stand in rooms and lose track of why you entered. Once at sunrise, you wash your hands 3 times and still cannot remember whether you already did. Alessandra notices immediately. "You need 1 full afternoon off this week," she says. "Impossible," you reply. "Necessary," she says. She arranges coverage with 2 younger physicians and a retired monk who handles non-critical calls. For 1 afternoon, you sleep by your own window while rain taps the sill. You wake disoriented, then grateful, then briefly ashamed, then steady. Rest is not indulgence. Rest is maintenance. That evening on rounds, you feel your voice return to normal cadence. You notice details again, ivy climbing a cracked wall, bread steam escaping a half-open vent, a cat curled on warm stones near a kiln. At final call, a woman asks you to sit 1 minute after treatment because she is afraid of the silence when you leave. You sit, no words, just shared breathing in a room lit by 1 candle and moonlight. When you step back into the lane, the watchman marks the hour and distant bells answer from the cathedral. Night after night, you cannot save everyone. But you can offer quiet mercies, measured breaths, timed rest, warm broth, careful records, 1 minute of company before the door closes. In plague time, these small mercies are not minor. They are the shape of care itself. The first winter frost arrives early, silvering rooftops and hardening mud into ridge tracks. With cold comes a subtle shift in reports. Fewer new households are marked each day. Not none, but fewer. The line on your weekly chart bends downward by degrees, so small you check calculations twice. People notice too, though no one trusts improvement at first. In District 5, doors still carry notices, but some windows open longer at midday. More smoke rises from chimneys in straight, calm columns. A cooper whose wife survived fever returns to mending barrels in his yard, working slowly with gloved hands. The city is not healed. It is only paused between waves. At council, officials debate whether to ring full market bells again. The bellmaster argues sound would restore morale. The health captain warns it would pull crowds too quickly. You present ledger data, recovery clusters in households that kept strict routines and avoided early gathering. The compromise is practical. One short bell each morning for essential trade only, no festival chime patterns. So winter begins with modest sound, restrained hope. Quarantine releases now outnumber new seal orders on some days. You carry stamp release papers lane by lane, often to homes that lost at least one member. Joy and grief arrive together at each threshold. A tailor opens his door to release notice and immediately asks where to find apprentices because both his sons are gone. A baker's widow receives clearance, then requests continued ration support until she can reopen the oven. Recovery is not a switch, it is administration plus mourning. At the infirmary, beds once full now show gaps between patients. Sister Marta uses the empty spaces to create convalescent corners with extra blankets and warm tea. Alessandra begins training younger assistants in post-fever care, gradual feeding, lung exercises, cautious return to labor. Survival has phases. Bureaucracy must learn each phase. Tommaso, who once wrote with shaking hands, now leads evening data review for 3 districts. He has improved the symbol system into a formal key copied by clerks citywide. Circle for children. Triangle for no fuel. Square for disability. Line slash for caregiver absent. You watch him explain the chart to senior officials twice his age, and no one interrupts. In plague time, competence redraws hierarchy. Still, winter carries its own hazards. Cold drives families indoors, increasing close contact. Fuel shortages push people to share rooms. Cough illnesses unrelated to plague confuse diagnosis. You spend long hours distinguishing probable cases from seasonal afflictions, while warning everyone that caution remains necessary. One evening, the bellmaster stops you outside the tower. "Listen," he says. He strikes a single low note. It hangs over stone streets and fades into dusk. Before this year I rang weddings, harvests, saintes. Now mostly deaths and orders. I almost forgot what a normal bell sounds like. You stand beside him in silence. Normal, you think, is not recovered in one chime. It is rebuilt by repetition. In late December, the magistrates authorized limited reopening of the West Market under strict spacing rules. Stalls are chalked with distance marks, entry points controlled, trade hours shortened, inspectors circulate with lists. On opening morning, people arrive quietly as if entering a church. A woman buys carrots and weeps at the color. A cobbler exchanges repaired boots for flour without bargaining. 2 children stare at oranges like they are painted glass. No one lingers. Yet the market functions. That night you write in your private notebook. Today we heard negotiation voices again. Today one argument ended in laughter. Today no crowd formed at release lane 3. Today fear was present but not sovereign. By January, death tolls remain heavy in memory, but lighter in daily entries. The city begins discussing spring planting, apprentice placements, and repair of neglected wells. Officials commission new mosques and gloves for reserve stockpiles, evidence that institutional memory is already hardening into policy. At home, you notice an unfamiliar sensation while removing your gloves. Not relief exactly. Space. A little more space in the chest. A little less urgency in the pulse. Before bed, you open your window a crack. Cold air enters, clean and sharp. Somewhere far off, a single bell sounds the hour, then stops. Winter without constant tolling feels almost impossible, and yet here it is. The plague is not vanished. The The city is still fragile, but for the first time in many months, tomorrow feels like a question rather than a sentence. When spring returns, the city looks the same from a distance and entirely changed up close. Roofs still rise in familiar lines. The cathedral still anchors the skyline. The river still bends beside the wall. But many workshops have new hands at old benches. Many households have fewer chairs occupied at supper. Many children now answer to tasks once done by absent adults. Your plague coat hangs by the door, cleaned and folded, no longer worn daily. The mask sits on a shelf beside ledgers tied with cord. You do not throw them away. Memory needs objects. The magistrates shift from emergency decrees to reconstruction ordinances. Tax relief for widows running family trade. Temporary wage floors for essential crafts. Apprenticeship fast track for orphaned youth. Grain reserve targets for next winter. Mandatory reporting protocol for unusual fever clusters. Some policies are generous, some are contested. All are shaped by the months you recorded line by line. In council sessions, landowners complain that laborers now demand higher pay and shorter obligations. Laborers reply that scarcity changed reality and risks must be priced. You watch centuries-old assumptions renegotiated in rooms that smell of parchment and sweat. The plague did not invent conflict, it made hidden terms visible. At the West Market, trade returns unevenly. Spice sellers recover slowly. Cobblers and cloth menders are busy beyond capacity because people repair instead of replace. Fish prices spike after 2 boat crews were lost in winter storms. Grain stabilizes after strong deliveries from less affected districts. You make occasional rounds to monitor post-illness complications. Persistent weakness, joint pain, chronic cough, anxiety that wakes survivors at the second hour of night. No single remedy resolves these patterns. Care becomes long-term and practical. Staged return to labor, community support, predictable meal schedules, and permission to rest without shame. Father Johnny and Sister Marta establish a weekly remembrance service with no names read aloud, only candles for categories, caregivers, children, unknown travelers, the poor. Attendance is high. People need ritual that does not reopen every wound at once. Tommaso now trains new clerks in district notation. He has grown into his role with quiet competence. One afternoon, he shows you an innovation, layered maps on thin parchment, one for deaths, one for recoveries, one for supply disruptions. If we compare layers early, he says, maybe next time we intervene faster. Next time. The words land heavily and then settle, because there may be a next time. In your own practice, requests change tone. Fewer urgent midnight calls, more consultations about lingering symptoms and safe return to communal life. Can we reopen the bathhouse? When should schools restart? Is shared communion cup safe? Can my daughter marry this summer? You answer with probability, caution, and humanity. Open slowly. Monitor closely. Keep ventilation. Avoid crowd surges. Protect the frail first. At home, you begin planting herbs in broken clay pots on the window ledge. Mint, sage, rue. Their scent and warm sun remind you that life expands into available space without asking permission. Still, grief remains active in ordinary moments. At the baker's lane, a woman sets out 3 bowls each morning, though only 2 people now live in her house. At the tanner's yard, a foreman pauses at noon where his apprentice once stood. In the market, a fiddler starts a dance tune and stops halfway, unable to continue. Rebuilding is not linear, it is layered over absence. The city also rewrites authority. During crisis, women who organize food circuits and care rotations earn practical legitimacy. Some now hold formal oversight roles in guild relief committees. Young workers who took on essential labor negotiate contracts with a confidence older masters did not anticipate. No proclamation announces this transformation. It appears in signatures, hiring choices, and who speaks first at meetings. One afternoon, you are invited to lecture apprentices at the medical school where you once studied. They expect dramatic tales. You give them systems. Record accurately. Count the living first. Respect caregivers. Coordinate with supply officers. Protect your own rest. Do not confuse confidence with certainty. A student asks what being a plague doctor felt like. You pause, then answer. It felt like walking a narrow bridge while helping others cross without knowing if the bridge would hold. At sunset, leaving the school, you hear full market bells for the first time in over a year. The sound is bright, almost startling. People lift their heads in lanes and courtyards. Some smile, some cry. Some simply continue walking because survival has taught them that joy can be quiet. That night before sleep, you touch the folded plague coat on its shelf and then close the window against cool spring wind. After the masks comes negotiation, adaptation, and memory. The city is alive. Not as before. Alive anyway. Years later, people will remember the mask before they remember the people inside it. They will picture the beak, the dark glass eyes, the cane, the waxed coat, and they will imagine certainty where there was mostly improvisation. They will tell stories of plague doctors as symbols, almost theatrical figures moving through smoke and bells. You know another version. The true weight of the role was not in costume, it was in repetition. Knocking on another door. Asking another family who can still stand. Writing another name with steady hand. Choosing language that calms instead of inflames. Returning the next day. By the time the city stabilizes, your official assignment ends. A magistrate thanks you with formal phrasing and a stamped document suitable for archives. You accept, bow, and leave the hall carrying less paper than you expected and more memory than you can measure. You continue practicing medicine, but now your methods are altered permanently. Every fever visit includes household assessment. Every treatment plan includes nutrition and caregiver rotation. Every public recommendation considers crowd behavior, rumor flow, and supply lines. Plague taught you that medicine is never only bedside. It is infrastructure, communication, and trust. In District 5, children who once watched you from behind doors now run errands in open lanes. Some wave, some stare, unsure whether to connect you with fear or relief. The widow from your first month sends bread each year on the day quarantine was lifted from her home. The apprentice carpenter, now a master, built new shutters for your clinic and refused payment. Not all legacies are public. Some are private rituals you still keep. You wash hands slowly before bed, even on quiet days. You write 3 factual notes each evening. You mark 1 act of kindness witnessed. Habit became scaffolding, scaffolding became character. At the medical school, younger scholars debate causes of the great mortality, with confidence sharpened by distance. They argue miasma, stars, commerce, divine judgment, hidden mechanisms no one can yet prove. You listen, contribute where useful, and remind them that uncertainty never excused neglect. One apprentice asks if fear can be cured. You answer, fear can be guided. Through structure, honesty, and shared duty. The city too carries forward practical memory. Storehouses maintain larger grain reserves. Clerks keep standardized district symbols. Guilds maintain relief ledgers. Churches preserve distributed prayer protocols for crisis weeks. Bell codes are revised so warnings and ordinary hours are clearly distinct. Policy is memory made durable. Yet myths grow faster than ledgers. Traveling storytellers exaggerate scenes, turning physicians into either heroes without doubt or villains without mercy. Neither version matches the long middle where most real work happened. The long middle was tired people coordinating, guard captains adjusting routes, nuns measuring broth, clerks sharpening quills at midnight, teenagers organizing oven rotations, neighbors leaving bread at unknown doors. If there is a lesson you trust, it is this. Catastrophe tests systems, but systems are built from ordinary choices repeated under pressure. On a late summer evening, you climb the bell tower with the old bellmaster, now retired. The city below glows gold. Market awnings ripple in warm wind. Laundry lines move like flags of peace between windows. He asks whether you think people have learned enough. You look over roofs, courtyards, wells and lanes where you once walked in wax and fear. Some have learned to say, others will have to learn again. He nods as if that is the only possible answer. At home that night, you open the first ledger from District 5. The pages smell faintly of vinegar and dust. You read early entries, names of people you can still see when you close your eyes. Some recovered, some did not. All were recorded. You place the ledger back on the shelf and extinguish the lamp. Outside, a normal bell marks the hour. No alarm pattern, no emergency signal, just time moving forward. You lie down and let the dark settle gently around you, breath in, breath out. What remains after plague is not only sorrow, though sorrow remains. What remains is method, humility, and the memory of shared care. What remains is a city that learned imperfectly to count every life. What remains is the quiet knowledge that duty, done steadily, can carry people through nights that once seemed endless. And what remains, as sleet gathers at the edge of hearing, is the softest truth of all. Even in the worst season, people kept showing up for one another. Again and again. Until morning.